MiniWarGaming rules you got wrong.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this week's edition of Rules You Got Wrong for our Warhammer 40k battle reports. I'll be starting off our show today, as I did have a couple of beat map bat reps that went up last week, or by the time last week by the time you're watching this. I had one that was Salamanders versus Militarum Tempestus, and then the Vault one was Ultramarines versus Khorne Demonkin. So I'll be going over the rules that I got wrong, or that you think I got wrong, and talk about whether you're right or I was right, and try to do better next time. As always, there's always going to be rules that we get wrong, so please make sure you point them out. But if you can take a quick look at the comments to make sure there hasn't already been 10 other people that pointed it out, that'd be great. For example, in my Salamanders vs. Militarum Tempestus battle report, Baza says, Matt, you kept saying that the Razorback was AV-12 at the front. It is 11-11-10, is it not? I don't know what kind of brain fart I had thinking that Rhinos and Razorbacks are armor 12 on the front. I think the only explanation I can come up with is that I've been playing with Chimeras a little bit in one of our campaigns that we're currently filming that you haven't seen yet. And Chimeras are 12 in the front. They're 12-10-10, and so maybe that was on my head. But all of a sudden I thought that Rhinos and Razorbacks were 12-11-10. So it's an embarrassing mistake, I must admit, because it's pretty fundamental. I've been playing Space Marines for a while, and Space Marines have been around forever, and I think they've mainly always been 11-11-10 for as long as I can remember. So that comment, it made no difference to the game anyways, but just for future reference. There's probably a couple points where maybe I would have lost a Razorback, but when you see the game, you realize that overall it didn't make a difference, but that doesn't matter. I feel kind of dumb for having gotten something like that, something that basic wrong. So I do apologize. But there was like 20 other comments at the same thing. So just take a quick look at the comments, and if you notice that it's already been said a dozen times, it does need to be said again. Black Rabbit 84, rules you got wrong. Camo netting only works if the vehicle remains stationary. That is incorrect, Black Rabbit 84. It doesn't say that at all. Maybe an older edition of Imperial Guard said that, but I looked it up and it just says camo netting gives +1 cover save to the vehicle. And that means that in the open, it would have a 6-up cover save. That's really all it says. It doesn't say if remains stationary or if it doesn't move. It just says it gives +1 cover save. Valor calls 1. Matt the Tarax has a fire point on the door and then one above the engine vent along the side. We looked at it really carefully, and sometimes it's hard to distinguish fire points and like the pilots, how the pilots are looking at. Like a Rhino, for example, has those 2 slits along the front. Those aren't fire points. The fire points are supposed to be where that hatch opens up on the top. And because Games Workshop doesn't tell you these things specifically, including whether most weapons are hull mounted or sponson mounted, they've basically said just look at the model. It's not always clear. It would be really, 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 really easy for them just to say, here's where the fire points are. Here's a little black and white wireframe diagram of the thing, and here's the fire points. Heck, give it like a top-down view to show the angle of fire that it has. Something as simple as that, it would be so easy. And then they don't have to give this whole whatever you think is reasonable kind of thing, because people won't agree on that. And so, yeah, we just kind of agreed that they could kind of see sideways out of the Taraxes. So that's the way we played it. Eldret, nice to see the Tempestus on the field. One question, should the lookout sir for the Tempestus Prime not work on a 2-up? You would think so, but he is not an independent character. He is a character inside of a command squad. And so therefore, characters only get 4-up lookout sirs, whereas independent characters get 2-up lookout sirs. Gino, at 4705, the Rhino should have been inflicting strength 7 hits on the Tarax when I was ramming. A lot of people were really happy that I rammed because they never get to see that. You get the strength by taking half the AV and then adding 1 for being a tank. Yeah, I just missed the fact that it gets +1 for being a tank. And whether it was 12 or 11, thankfully that strength works out the same because you round up. The Tarax not having the tank type would hit back at strength 6. So yeah, it would have been strength 7 instead of 6. Fleshcraft, I know it wouldn't matter, but the Tempestor Prime has only 2 wounds. Yeah, that squad kind of got totally destroyed. But yeah, it only has 2 wounds, you're right. Azek Araman, 31 minutes in, you couldn't charge as you got out from a destroyed transport that was not an assault transport. Therefore, on your turn, you are unable to charge. That is absolutely correct. I made that mistake there. That one could have made a difference in the game. I don't know. I just forgot by that point, maybe because of how long we've been filming. Maybe we had stopped for lunch. I don't know. That by that point, it had actually disembarked in the previous turn. So totally a mistake on my end. Aaron Stegner, the rule book says only 1 grenade of any type can be used in any phase by the same unit. No need to wait for the FAQ. So even though I've been using the FAQ in my later battle reports, This FAQ, or this battle report, I hadn't yet. And certain people in the past have said, well, the rule book is very clear that you can only use one. I'm going to tell you right now, Aaron, it's not clear. Now, right away, you're going to be like, but it is. The thing is, when you get half the people who read it not agreeing with you, it's not clear. You have to at least agree that it's not clear, because it says that you can't throw more than one grenade, and so people are like, well, you throw it in the shooting phase, in the close combat phase, you attach them. It even talks about melted bombs only being able to use in the close combat phase because they're not actually thrown, they're like lodged onto the thing. And I know you might think, well, you're just nitpicking the words, but that's just the fact of the matter is it's been very disputed. And so we just went with, I think ITC ruled that you could use them. Or I can't remember how we made that decision a long time ago, but that's just how we've been playing it. Now the FAQs come out, and I still don't agree with it. I agree that you can say, well, that's the rules as written. We're going to do it, but we can only do one grenade in the assault phase, but I don't agree with it because it doesn't make sense for a lot of things. There's certain units that purchase their grenade per model. Like Tau Fire Warriors purchase their EMP grenades. They pay a certain points per model. In 30K, it really nerfs a lot of things. There are squads where you pay like 25 or 50 points so the whole squad has melta bombs. You think that's overpowered, but they're already expensive squads, and so why would you pay this extra 25 or 50 points to give the whole squad melta bombs for only one to be able to use it? You might think, well, then there's redundancy, so you don't just have one guy that has it and he dies. But I'd rather just upgrade a sergeant to have melta bombs for like 5 or 10 points than give 25 or 50 points to a whole squad just for a little bit of redundancy. So I don't think that their original rules writers intended for only one grenade to be used in the assault phase, just because of the way everything else kind of works. Just like the drop pod doors, I know for certain they didn't originally intend for the doors to be part of the model, because you have the Dreadnought drop pod that has specific wording that says if the Dreadnought stays on any portion of the drop pod, meaning like the doors, it gets shrouded. But how can it stay on the doors if they're considered part of the vehicle? So that's just weird that they would all of a sudden change those things. The grenade one, yeah, I'd toss a die or toss a coin to see which one they actually intended. It wasn't very clear. But just be careful when you come to rules disputes. You can't just always come into them saying, well, it's obvious this way, when a lot of people are disputing it. There must be some sort of wording or some sort of reason that it's not clear. That way you can have more reasonable arguments when it comes to the rules, too. Captain Crump, is it legal to combat squad tactical squads while they are in a transport? Yes, it actually specifically talks about how they can take the same transport, such as a drop pod or a rhino, which is actually really cool because it allows you to, like you saw me do, drop pod in the squad and have them separate from each other. So that is legal. Bosley 165, pretty sure the Tarox Prime only has a 10 model capacity. Chimeras are the only ones at 12. We actually realized this pretty much near the end of our game, but considering that I had Armor 12 Razorbacks and I charged out of a Razorback, I think that's a small offense. Peter Kruger from the Big Red rule, or from the Big Red book, gets hot and rerolls if a model has the ability to reroll its to hits. A wound, it only has. So basically, I think I rolled it to hit with a plasma cannon, or somebody rolled a 1 to. I can't remember which one it was, but they rolled a 1 and didn't reroll it, and so I had an ability to reroll that and didn't. So yes, you're right. I should have been able to reroll that gets hot roll. Dynastic 420, I know that this is a friendly game, but I think that you forgot to do actions in their supposed sequence. Then you are not supposed to do it later. This is an important part of the game. Yes and no. There's in any game that you play, there's a certain amount of friendliness that you have to bring to it. That if your opponent forgets something, and especially if it's going to be critical, that it's often better to let them do it. As long as I have kind of a rule of thumb that as long as it's not like awkwardly too long away from it, or like too many things have taken their actions since, then it's fine. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to because you didn't give a timestamp for me to look it up. But if you're thinking, for example, we went on to the shooting phase, but we had forgotten to move something and something had already shot and we still went back and moved it, within reason, we allow that kind of stuff. Just because it can really leave a sour taste in your own mouth when you're playing the game and you forgot to use something and it could have made a big difference. It's a frustrating feeling. And I know that in a more competitive and tournament setting, that's part of the game, that you have to be aware of everything. But our battle reports are not tournament battle reports. They're not meant to be these ultra competitive, winner takes all kind of things. They're meant to be fun. They're meant to just showcase the funness of the game. And so it's really unfun if you're totally unflexible for allowing your opponents to correct mistakes that they may have made, as long as it's reasonable. And that's a hard thing to talk about once again, because then I'm sounding like the Games Workshop FAQ. Whatever your opponent thinks is reasonable, then it's fine. Ben Thorne, I might be being dumb, but I thought a battle Demi company needs both an assault squad and a devastator squad. It does not. It needs either to bring an assault squad, bikes, attack bike squad, or a land speeder. So that was the 4. You have to choose one of those. And it's either devastator or centurion assault squad, I think is the other one. And the other one is either a devastator or centurion devastator squad. So, yeah. Machni 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, do drop pods automatically correct when coming in if the pod scatters? Yeah. It's called inertial guidance system or something like that. If they scatter, not off the table. If they go off the table, they miss out. But if they scatter onto somewhere that they're not allowed to, you reduce the scatter distance until they're an inch away from enemies or they're outside of impassable terrain. So yeah, that's what makes them so awesome and reliable. Gundam 116, Matt equals fat cheeks and a cheater. I love you too, Gundam 116. You're my favorite person. Now into the Vault Battle Report, Ultramarines versus Khorne Demonkin. Ron, okay, first off, a lot of people, it's funny, there's a lot of comments that were talked about in there because, spoiler alert, the game was pretty one-sided. I was able to destroy him pretty badly. Some people were like, it's not fun to watch grav spam, because I had 2 grav cannons and tactical squads and a Centurion grav squad. The thing is, I really worked hard on crafting a list that I thought would have the right amount of anti-armor without having too much or too little. Because he was bringing an all Dreadnought list, essentially, an all Walker list. So if I slightly miscalculate, then I could just get stomped and there would be no chance on my side either. So I always try to make my list to be the same balance level. And thankfully, there's also a lot of people who commented what I agree with, that it wasn't necessarily that I have too much grav, is that he had abysmally bad rolls. He didn't make a single save out of the first half a dozen grav hits. And that's a pretty bad thing, considering that they will immobilize you and totally shut down a walker. And so he had pretty bad rolls. There's probably a couple tactical things he could have done better, but that's harder to say when in the first turn things like that kind of happen. But I don't think there was too much grav. Now, having said that, there are some people who don't like grav, and I totally agree. I think grav is a little overpowered for what it can do, in just that it just straight up immobilizes. I don't necessarily like that. I don't mind it like doing a penetrating hit or something on a 6. That would be kind of cool. And on a 6 it pens, not just a glance, but actually pens at AP2. I think that would be more interesting. And that way you'd have other results that could happen, like it tears off a weapon or it just straight up explodes the thing if it gets it, just like another weapon overall. But since all the grav cannons have these grav amps that let you re-roll that makes them very, very powerful. So it ended up being very powerful, but it was, I think, more a combination of the bad dice rolls on his end that caused the game to go out of whack so quickly. So, here we go. Ron Croc 1022, how did the Psyker get the Primaris if you have Technomancy as well? I thought you only get Psychic Focus if you take 1 power. You are correct. You only get Psychic Focus if you only take, not 1 power, but from 1 discipline. Now, you can still take the Primaris. So basically the way you do it is you see how many you're supposed to generate. Let's say 2 in this case. Or it's Tigurius, let's say 3. But let's say there's 2. You choose a discipline. You roll on that table. If you don't like the result of your roll, you can swap it for the Primaris. Unless you're going to roll everything on the same discipline, in which case you automatically get the Primaris, so you can't swap for it as well. And so all I did was roll on Divination. Didn't like it, so I took Prescience. It was as simple as that. And then I rolled on Technomancy. But I didn't get the Primaris of Technomancy. I could have swapped one of mine for the Primaris, but it didn't bother. So you can get the Primaris still. It's there for 2 purposes, Psychic Focus and just being one that you can automatically get. Gadams, if you are still using ITC rules, D-weapons on a 6 only do 3 hull points, not D6 plus 6. The Brass Scorpion still had a chance to survive. We don't use ITC rules for everything. We use it for more like the clarification stuff. And now that the new FAQ comes out, we have to reevaluate all of that. But we don't just straight up say everything that ITC does, we do. It's more like all the clarifying, all like the D-weapon thing, there's no question of how D-weapons work in 40K. And so they decided to rebalance it for their tournaments. So we don't really take the stuff that rebalances the game. We more take the stuff like how many grenades can you throw in the assault phase? Do you have to roll to hit with psychic powers that don't have a profile that we use there? Now there's the FAQ now that tells us that we don't have to. Or multi-level ruins and blasts and templates, how they work together, like that kind of stuff where it fixes or just answers questions that are currently unanswerable because we didn't have the FAQ yet. That's what we're using ITC for. So not things that change the game like that drastically, except for maybe the multi-level blast thing, but that's more an element of the type of terrain that we like to use. Fatty McSnipe. Sadly, the Scorpion and Blood Slaughters and possibly Decimators in the Khorne formation are not given the Blood for the Blood God special rule. But if someone can find an FAQ errata saying otherwise, that would be nice. Yeah, that's true. So he wouldn't have been getting all those extra blood tithe points. But let's face it, that didn't affect the game, really. Joka. Kudos for MiniWarGaming team for putting online this battle report. Sometimes I've felt that some phenomenal results, last turn face-offs, key unit surviving Hellstorm on the losing side, were possibly arranged for show purposes. Then games like this one remind you that sometimes the dice opt for epic games, a gamer just fails every single save, and a stomp is real. And while the game itself is not enjoyable, I know I'll like more the next time something huge happens on MiniWarGaming. Yeah, we don't fudge our battle reports. There was a time, back when I was making narrative ones, where we fudged a couple things to keep key characters alive who are important to the story. I don't even do that anymore because people just don't like that. I thought it would be more important to craft the story for those, and people were like, no, I want it to be real. And I'm like, okay. I can fudge the story all I want, but when it comes to the actual battle report, that's legit. And same thing for I'd say 99.9999999% of rolls. I recently think I had a. Did we end up doing that? I know there's one battle report in my mind. It was years ago. And it was a Grey Knight player who brought the Drago, Paladin, Death Star. So basically like 3/4 of his army was tied up in one gigantic deep striking first turn unit. And he deep striked, he mishapped, he rolled a 1. And I literally turned off the camera, deleted that clip and said, all right, let's re-roll that. Because that would have been the end of the battle report. It would have been literally, hey, here's the list we're bringing. First turn, deep striking, dead. The end. Like he'd have I think he had a Dreadnought and another squad somewhere, and I still had my full army. And it would have just been the dumbest battle report ever. And so that's years ago. And I think there was one that was recent that we changed, that we re-rolled the dice roll because it was one of those beginning of the game, this happened. It was probably some sort of mishap too. But I think what it was is that something almost happened and it didn't. So, but I can tell you that our battle reports are legit. We don't film 10 of them and take the best ones. We just play the game. It's the way you see it is the way it is. We just play it, frustrations and all. Field 907. Don't forget that now you must declare all super heavy or gargantuan shooting attacks before rolling. I think it's dumb, but you're right. But this was before the FAQ, or before we started using the FAQ, so it wasn't a mistake in this game. It's more from now on we have to do that. So that's all of mine. So let's move on to the rest.
Here's some more from Dark Angels vs. Dreadnoughts Warhammer 40k Battle Report, episode 65. Fine slow at 9:24. The Leviathan should have been snap firing and only hitting on 6s, as it was crew shaking from the penetrating hit. Bingo. Forgot about that one. I forgot about some vehicles taking hits. We goof around behind the camera, and time passes, and these things get forgotten. Boris says, Steve, vehicles, drop pods, cannot overwatch. Okay. Of course. Got anything to add to that?
Did you overwatch with a drop pod?
No.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Samura says, rules got wrong. Timestamp 2:30. Dana said Ashman does a 5-up invuln save. I play it myself, but never found anything about that. Hope I'm wrong. Can't find it anywhere. I looked myself. Couldn't find it. So maybe he had an old data slate or something, or sheet. No, I couldn't find it. Yeah, so no invuln save for Ashmantle. I don't think it would have mattered. He was crushing me without that invuln. Master Crafty, great battle. Love Dreads. What was giving the Deathwing Knights Fearless? Is it a rule the unit has? Yes. They have the Deathwing special rule, which gives them Fearless. I noticed after the last knight died and only Libby was left, shouldn't he have lost Fearless? No, because he also has Fearless, the Deathwing special rule. So, nope, all good there. Kamikaze Thunderhawk says, all Contemptors minus the Quarters class are BS5 and don't have access to Cyclone missile launchers. They have Havoc with the Strength 5 Blast. These are Horse Heresy rules, and not sure if Index Astartes is different, or even if the ones you are using for each, as it wasn't specified. So you are quoting Horse Heresy rumors, and we weren't playing, rules, and we weren't playing Horse Heresy. So do we have to specify that we're using Index Astartes rules in a 40k game? Because we have to, right? So no, it'd be the rules from Index Astartes book. I think it's Apocalypse book, where they are only Blitzskill 4, not 5, and they can purchase Cyclone missile launchers. And I believe since then the data slate has come out in Angels of Death, making Contemptors, they changed their data slate up, so they probably are Blitzskill 5 now. but I'm not sure if everybody would be forced to use that. That's a whole other thing. But at the time, no, we're obviously using index authorities because we're playing a 40k game, not 30k rules in a 40k game. Jonathan Schoenher, I thought they changed the rules for Dreadnought drop pod. You can no longer choose to stay embarked on it, just hands out shroud. No. No, I looked this up. There's a thing saying you don't have to say you can't disembark from. So what it doesn't say is you have to disembark like a regular drop pod does. So you stay on it, you're totally fine. You're unit embarked in an open top vehicle. At around 8 minutes and 50 seconds, vehicles get a 4-up cover save from obscurity or the crate special. So look to the screen. A Dreadnought shot at my something, or I shot at something with the Dreadnought, I can't remember. But there's some of the crates we use here at MiniWarGaming in the way. Now, I guess you can argue those are 4-up cover, but we always play them as 5-up around here. But yeah, I can see the confusion. But generally, no, all terrain we use is 5-up unless it's something we mentioned differently, like a building or a ruin. But yeah, I can understand the mistake on that one. I'm not necessarily saying we did it wrong, but kind of we did, because you can, I don't know, how do you use it as 5-up cover, Josh?
I would use them as a 5-up cover. It's something you discuss with your opponent ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think you're going to do a better job maybe of saying that on camera.
We get used to just doing the same thing over and over again and assume that everybody knows that we use our crates as 5-up. I'm assuming we all do the same thing. Matthew, for all I know, could use 4-up on those crates. So yeah, I probably should just explain a little bit better what we're using our terrain as. Where are we going here? Knights have Hammer of Wrath. Sure do at strength 4. I mean, can't use them against armor 12. Leviathan.
That attitude.
No, I should have tried harder. Leviathan would have been hitting on 2s. Sorry, would have been hitting on 6s, not 2s, since he was stunned. I don't. Ultramarine 2 says, or no, Ultramarine says Leviathan would have been hitting on 6s, not 2s, because he was stunned. Nothing hits on 2s. First of all, let's go there for a second, because that's where I'm stuck. I believe that's where I'm stuck. Nothing hits on 2s. Everything hits on 3s, at best. Unless you're...
There's ways you can do it, but on the chart...
But more importantly, stun does not make you hit on 6s. So, like... I think you're wrong in your rules interpretation, and you're wrong in... You're just wrong. I don't know how to say it. You're wrong. I'm moving on. Peter Cuthbert says... Although you can't assault the drop pod when it's under the shrouded rule... Also, you can't assault the drop pod when it's under the shrouded rule. I don't even know what you're... I'm trying not to laugh, but where do you even come up with that? Unless it's different from 40k to 30k, but it's not even in 30k like that. Of course you can assault the drop pod. Also, the dreads can shoot out the drop pods in their first turn as they're open topped. Anyone they shoot at also benefits from the shrouded special rule. No. So you said you can't assault the drop pod when it's shrouded. I don't know where you're coming up with that. That absolutely you can. Secondly, the Dreadnought is embarked upon an open top vehicle. So using the rules from shooting at an open top vehicle, you measure from the hull. So absolutely he would not be giving shrouded to anything he shoots at. So no sir, wrong on both. And next game, Dark Angels or Dreadnoughts, episode 66. Shouldn't the Space Wolf Dreadnought have 5 attack space? I know MiniWarGaming aren't using the draft FAQ, but the errata is official, isn't it? You are right. At the time we filmed this game, that errata hadn't been released. So I couldn't give you a heads up saying it's an FAQ thing. No, so it is an errata, and it should have been 5, but we filmed it when it was still 2. That's why. So sorry about that one, but nothing, it's hard to go back and check all the battle reports after errata comes out. The ones that have been filmed but haven't been released yet. So that's it for my 2 battle reports.
That's it for today's Rules You Got Wrong 40K edition. Make sure you leave your comments in the, comments below if you disagree with anything that was said in this video. And then in our future battle reports, make sure you leave timestamps and comments on any rules that we got wrong. Just double check to make sure somebody else hasn't beaten you to the punch. Thanks for watching. Happy wargaming.